Hello, my name is Dr. Jeff Kim, National Board Certified Teacher. Welcome to EdFamily. Today I want you to go back in time, like maybe even before college. In fact, let's go ahead and go back to that first day when we started middle school. Perhaps if you're like me, you hardly slept a wink. In the upcoming weeks, it will be that first day for many students, and perhaps they will be feeling what you felt, and maybe more as we battle two pandemics this year. The pandemic of COVID-19 and also the pandemic of racism, including the surge in anti-Asian racism. So how do we meet the students where they are at and get to know them? In episode 1, we focused on discovering our why of what we do. In episode 2, we learned about not just going through the pandemic of 2020, but growing through it and finding our story of resilience. And today, we move the shift a little bit off ourselves and now onto our incoming students. Well, welcome to EdFamily episode 3, and today we'll be talking about how to get to know your students and meet them where they're at as well. And how do we get to know them? Well, I'll tell you, it's not easy. You got 35 students coming in for 43 minutes, the bell rings, and then after another 5 minutes, you got another 35 students coming in for 43 minutes, and then the bell rings, and you got another 35 students coming in for 43 minutes. I think you get the point. I work in Anaheim Union High School District, so many awesome things come forth from many brilliant minds that I get to work with. And a big part of the focus of the beginning of the school year is knowing our students. We get to have that space to know them by name, to know them by need, know them by their assets, and know them by their stories. And I'd like to add also by their passions as well. What are students passionate about? In our district, we call this first best instruction, but it's also called universal design for learning, where you connect with the student's heart and then mind, and then give them something to do. So I do teach a couple of history classes, and what I often tell our students is welcome to history. And what is history? In their minds, they may be thinking, well, history is boring. But I tell them history is made up of many stories, his and her stories, and I can't wait to explore the world with you. I do, however, want to begin with your his and her stories so that we can create our story in our history class. I tell them how getting to know them is important for me to be the best teacher that I can be for them. And I also know that in order to create that third space, a space which includes my own thoughts, backgrounds, understandings, and skills, with their thoughts, understandings, backgrounds, and skills, I need to know my students and foster that safe and positive learning environment where we can dialogue, have mutual respect, and thus lead to mutual learning. Now, the students are intrigued because the big question that middle and high school students are asking is, who am I? And I'm going to give them an opportunity to discover themselves. Later, we may talk a little bit more about not just knowing your story, but also telling your story and listening to the stories of others and doing something good with your story. But for today, I'm just going to focus on my introductory Our Story module number 1. So what is Our Story module? It's basically a collage about themselves, their interests, backgrounds. I know this sounds simple, but that's where I want to begin, with what they're interested in and what they feel comfortable sharing. And this becomes the foundation of our community. And here are some questions students can choose from to create that collage. In my class, students create their work on a Google slide, and together we make a class slide deck. There's a school that I work at where a number of us teachers in the same grade level will be actually giving the same assignment so that students can take their time and pour themselves into this Our Story to discover themselves. Students can then use these slides to introduce themselves to one another, other teams, as well as to the entire class. In addition to developing skills like communication and collaboration very early on in the school year, It's also an invitation to begin to know their story. Remember how I talked about knowing students by name, need, assets, stories, and passions? Knowing your students is the beginning of building that positive learning environment, the beginning of building community, the beginning of civics. It's the beginning of culturally relevant pedagogy. It's the beginning of socio-emotional learning and more. Later, this assignment can be reviewed, perhaps at the end of the quarter or the semester, and students can see how much change and growth there has been. And students can also continue this assignment with an ethnography module, which I may discuss in a separate episode later. I don't know if this is a first day assignment, but I definitely will give it in the first couple of days. And if I were to give advice, however, for that first day, whatever you decide to do, I hope your students will leave your class and go home and with a big smile on their face, tell their parents, I think it's going to be a good year. And I hope it's a good year for you as well. I hope this episode is another step in supporting you with helping your kids find what they're good at and then doing good with it. This is Dr. Jeff at EdFamily signing out.